Welcome in, Braves Today, bravestoday.com. He's Lindsay Crosby. I'm Ben Taylor. Of course, it's brought to you by Plains Coffee. Go to plainscoffee.com. Promo code Braves, get your 10% off. Lindsay, it wasn't so much the loss that the Braves took before they head on to see the Mets due to the postponement and rainout of game number 2, as much as it was I hung around after to watch the postgame presser with Snitker, and that's honestly one of the most deflated I've seen him, even dating back to postseason pressers where they lost, because he seems at a loss right now as to what needs to happen in order for things to be fixed. And I'm a big believer in you kind of follow what your leader's doing. And if he's gonna have that attitude, I just wonder what's going on in that clubhouse.
I mean, they had a players only meeting the other day, right? Which Snit confirmed he wasn't in the room for that. He didn't call it. The players did it. We don't have details as to who called it and things like that. But what have we said all season about this team? This offense is too good to be bad all season.
Yes.
And what has happened outside of Marcell Ozuna, who is still batting .311, this offense has been bad all season. And I'm kind of in the same boat as Brian Snitker I don't understand why. And I don't know why it hasn't gotten better, right? And it's not just underperformance. It's how extreme the underperformance is, right? Matt Olson hits 54 home runs with a slugging just over 600 last year. His slugging right now, 389. I mean, he is literally the worst hitter in baseball the last, 30 days. I had it in last night's takeaways. Last 30 days, he is the worst hitter in baseball. He had 2 hits today, but that's not, it's just too many of these guys.
That's his first 2 that he's had since the All-Star break.
Yeah, it's these guys are, it's odd to see how good everybody was last year and how bad everybody but Marcell Ozuna is this year, and it just doesn't make a lot of sense. And I'm kind of with Brian Snitker. At this point, you would have assumed that they could figure it out. And even in a game where offensively you picked up 10, 11 hits, you scored 5 runs, you still lose because you give up 7 runs in the first 2 2/3 innings. You leave double-digit runners on base because you load the bases twice and don't with 1 out and don't score either time. And then all the injuries, everything is going wrong for Atlanta, and it hasn't been getting better like we thought it would, right?
Yeah, we totally thought that in the second half, stuff would start kind of rearing its head in another direction for the Braves and not be so much
even out.
Doom and gloom. Exactly, because it usually does. In all sport, it usually evens out. Not just baseball, but it usually evens itself out. And some of the good and the bad before it's all. We say that about umpires all the time. We complain about bad calls, but then every now and then you get a few go your way, and it ends up making up for it a little bit later on down the road. Now, it just when you talk about the hitting, it's one of those things where last year, Lindsay, and even at the first part of this year, it seemed like the Braves were never out of a game. And then when they get up to the plate, a couple of games ago, and they're a couple of runs down and they get runners on, honestly, I didn't have that feeling of we're about to tie this game and go into extras. I had the feeling of, well, here comes 3 up, 3 down now that we have a couple of runners on. And that honestly is what's been coming true. So it's been the fight, the lack of production. And I get it. They've been kicked in between the legs numerous times with Acuna, with Strider, with Harris. You
Freed, Riley. We can keep going.
Yeah,
Murphy. We can Ozzy.
Ozzy. Who that was? I knew he was going on the IL. Next thing I know, the social media post comes out. And he's got a cast on his arm. I'm like, great. So much for thinking he's coming back early. So
8 weeks. It is legitimately going to be 8 weeks. Yes. This is not a thing where they're going to say, yeah, this is. It's a break, and he'll pull a Orlando Arcia last year and come back in 3 or 4 weeks. No, he's out for 8 weeks, which kind of surprised they didn't use a 60-day IL spot, but I guess they're saving that for later in case he does make it back sooner than 8 weeks.
Speaking of which, 60-day IL spot, they did that with Harris. which kind of shocked me a little bit because I thought he was at least swinging a bat. But apparently, Michael Harris II is not necessarily as far along on the road to recovery than I thought he was. Now, I will say, I hope they're being overcautious with him. I'm fine with that. Everybody says, well, we need him in the lineup. Well, we need him in the lineup, but we also don't need him to tweak it when he's running out of ground ball to first either and be right back where we are.
Yeah, and being a center fielder and how much center fielders run, right?
Mm-hmm.
We saw him today before the game this morning about 10 a.m. on the field. He was stretching. He was doing some work, like some leg work and things like that, but he's not running. So even if he were swinging and hitting and things like that, it's the running that he hasn't done yet. And so he has to get to the point where he can run. Then he has to get to the point where he can run full speed, and then where he can do it for a full game before you send him on a rehab stint. So I believe with the 60-day placement, he's eligible to come back like August 11th. He wasn't going to be back before that anyway. And the good thing is, and some people were confused about this on Twitter, putting somebody on the 60-day IL is retroactive to the day they originally went on the injured list.
Yes.
It's not 60 days from when you put them on the 60-day. So it doesn't add 2 months to his
Right.
injury absence. It just shifts him from the 15. It's like you put him on the 60 up front, but you get the 40-man roster spot back, which they needed. So, he mid-August is the tentative timeline. They've not given official word. That's just kind of what we're all going with based on where he is here. And he did say he's never actually had a severe hamstring strain. This is a grade 2, which technically is a partial tear.
Wow.
So everybody's like, he's going to miss 2 months on a hamstring strain. It's technically a torn hamstring. It's just not completely torn off the bone. It's partially torn. So 2 months, I get it. It'd probably take me more than 2 months to come back from that.
Yeah, and again, it is number one of the position he plays. Number two, even the way his approach is at the plate, he's going to come out of the box rather quickly. It's those bursts that are going to get him, and that's what they want to stay away from. So,
that's what got him when he had the original injury was the burst trying to run to first base. He didn't get hurt playing his position. He got hurt running the first base out of the box.
A shout out to the creativity that I saw online throughout the day where they talked about the players only meeting and somebody had said, was that a group chat or an email that was sent? Because it doesn't look like it was very effective. There were a couple other people that chimed in and basically made some reference to Olsen. I did like the creativity of them trolling some Philly fans where they said it takes Michael Harris II getting on the IL, no Acuna, no Strider, Olsen not hitting, Ozzie being out with a broken hand, us losing a catcher at the first of the season, an abscess tooth from our shortstop, and bringing in Rosario from another team when he was hitting sub 200 to be productive in order for the Phillies to be in first place. So congrats to those creative minds that are out there in the social media world.
I do want to point out that all of that is true. Philly is still 2-4 against Atlanta this season.
Yes.
Exactly. They've been outscored by 21 runs in 6 games.
Exactly.
By Atlanta. By this Atlanta team.
Yes. So we'll put in a note to Manfred to see if we can get more Philly games on the schedule for 2025, and maybe that will work out. Well, hey, let's play less White Sox and let's play more Philly games. How about that, Manfred? How about you fix that in that interleague play? It's brought to you by Plains Coffee or plainscoffee.com. Promo code Braves, 10% off. They got coffees. They've got teas. They've also got flavored coffees as well. They roast them as soon as you put your order in and ship them to your door. Go to plainscoffee.com. Promo code Braves, your 10% off. So I guess the next thing is, what is the next step? Because Lindsay, you and I were talking about this before we got on, and not necessarily next step, like what do you have to do to improve, as much as it is, we've had questions about acquisitions that will get made. Well, now it's pretty apparent that a bat has got to be found because clearly that's not in the lineup, and there's still an opportunity to walk away with a wild card, as well as you never know with a couple of series left against the Phillies, at least playing chase me down as far as the Phillies are concerned. So what's the feeling you get from who they're keeping, who they're dealing, and who they're acquiring, I guess?
So it very much feels like an outfielder is going to be brought in. Even if you get Michael Harris back in mid-August, like they're going to, for a fact you won't have him back by the deadline. So they're going to make a move in the outfield. And when you look at the current outfielders that you have, it kind of makes sense, right? Because both Eddie Rosario and Adam Duvall, Duvall batting 183 with a 563 OPS. Rosario as a Brave, I've got that here, 205 with a 604 OPS. We've seen Adam Duvall have some defensive issues in right field, to kind of put it politely. A lot of teams have gotten a lot of triples off of Atlanta in the last, feels like the last week or so.
That's very diplomatic of you to refer to it that way.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. And after today's game, that's probably the first time in a while where I've legitimately thought some of these veterans are going to lose a roster spot at the trade deadline. Like Atlanta's going to go out and make some moves. And so Adam Duvall, Eddie Rosario, Ramon Laureano are your three corner outfielders right now. One, they haven't wanted to play Laureano hardly at all since they got Rosario back. I mean, Laureano came off the IL. I think he started one time in right field in place of Adam Duvall. It feels like you could have up to two of those players being gone by the time Michael Harris is back, right? I don't know who it's going to be. Laureano hasn't played a lot. It feels like he might be one of them. They've got more money wrapped up in Adam Duvall than Eddie Rosario, but arguably Eddie's already been better in his 11 games than Duvall has been in his 79. So 80 now, I guess, technically. So I feel like two of those guys are going to be gone. And then I'm starting to wonder how long the leash will be for Zach Short in the middle infield. We saw he made the throwing error in the first inning that allowed Spencer Steer to score on the triple that Duvall dove and missed. We saw another defensive miscue from him. Wasn't an error that time, but another defensive miscue from him later in the game. Offensively, he's put down a couple key bunts, but he's batting 137 in about 65 plate appearances. And so we're kind of at the point of, I don't know. He's also not really giving you a lot defensively. As long as you have somebody on the roster who can play shortstop, which right now you have Ignacio Alvarez. If you have Nacho, Luke Williams has made a start at shortstop this year as well. David Fletcher's still in the organization in Double-A. It feels like either, now that once Whit Merrifield's healthy, you may not have much longer with Zach Short. I do think that with Nacho Alvarez and Arcia, you've got two guys who can play shortstop. Whit Merrifield's played everywhere but shortstop and catcher, for the record. He's never played shortstop in the majors. But feels like Zach Short's going to lose a job too. And it's just simply because he's been on the roster for almost 30 games. You haven't really gotten much out of him. He scored 3 runs. He's not driving in runs. He's not adding defensively. He's a guy that you can plug in, but he's not actually doing any good work at those positions. So today's probably the first time that I thought, I don't know how much of this bench is going to turn over. Every non-Travis d'Arnaud person on this bench may turn over by the end of the trade deadline. And I don't know who you're going to get, but it feels pretty set in stone. You're going to get at least one outfielder, if not two. And you're going to make some moves and move some guys around.
Yeah, I think some Braves fans that have some loyalty to some of these players are going to be a little disappointed. However, when you do deep dives like you do and look into the numbers, it's just something that it's kind of unavoidable at this point. If you're going to make a run, you can't live off of hope. And right now you're kind of hoping that Duvall snaps out of it and hoping Rosario snaps out of it. As you mentioned, I know that I was doing it tongue in cheek talking about his defensive efforts, but I've told you Duvall right now, he seems that age the old man River is starting to catch up with him a little bit, and he seems a step slower. You and I mentioned that a couple of pods ago. As of late, with some of those triples where balls are just going off the tip of his glove, or he's just missing, or it's just out of reach, it's almost like his body thinks it can get there, and it can't get there.
And he can't quite do it. And this is a dude that played center field for us down the stretch in 2021. I mean, granted, that was 3 years ago. But even as recently as last year, when he was healthy in Boston, he was a contributor defensively. Granted, that outfield's a little easier to contribute defensively there than it is somewhere else. But, I mean, I don't know if it's the Georgia heat. He is a type 1 diabetic. I don't know if it's the heat, if it's age. the late start to the season or all of that put together, but he's not the same player this year that he was last year. And playing him every single day feels like it is a mistake. I honestly expected when Laureano came back, they would platoon Rosario and Duvall. We saw Rosario almost never started against lefties last year. Duvall was terrible against righties. It seemed painfully obvious to me. Laureano was doing well when he went down. He was batting like 256.
Mm-hmm.
You put him in there, you let him play every day in right, you platoon the guys in left until you get Harris back, and then you reevaluate. And that's not what they've done. They've put Rosario and Duvall out there in the corners every day, and it's not a winning formula. And I think we're seeing, if the pitching takes any sort of step back, which Ronaldo Lopez gave up 4 runs for the first time in his all season the other day. If the pitching takes a tiny step back, combined with this offense being as decimated as it is, it's a recipe to lose games. And you've had one losing month all year. You're on track to have a second losing month right now in July, unless you do something. And you're heading to New York, who is behind you in the East, and not by that much.
Nope.
They're not that far behind. Atlanta has fallen now into a wild card chase. They are leading the wild card, but not by much. I think it's 2. I think it's maybe it's like 2. It's like 2 games right now.
Yeah,
and so this is and so this is. I mean, this matters right now. Like this is you no longer have a cushion. Like you did.
And so front office has got to do some things. As Snit mentioned in his press conference, he said something's got to change. I will give him that, even though he was kind of down on everybody. He said he treats it like a business type scenario, and he said something's got to change. We can't keep doing what we've been doing, or we'll be back to the drawing board before it's all said and done with. So catch Lindsay on Braves Today. You can catch all the articles that are out there. We'll be breaking this down constantly on the pod, but Lindsay and the guys, they have got tons of articles that you can catch on bravestoday.com. Of course, it's all brought to you by plainscoffee.com here on the pod. With promo code BRAVES, you're 10% off. Lindsay, as always, I greatly appreciate your time, sir.